Hello, everyone. Am I on yet? Yeah. Okay. It's lovely that you mentioned the biodynamic gardening, Anita. I'd actually given up the gardening to concentrate on storytelling and tour guiding, but obviously we're in this situation, and the organic farm I used to work for invited me back during lockdown to deliver vegetables. So I spend my Saturdays delivering 50 boxes of vegetables all around Belfast. And last week I delivered a box to a man. He came to the door and he said, "These vegetables are so beautiful." He says, "I'm going to display them in my church harvest festival this weekend." And you know, it was the first time this year, because I'm not gardening hands-on as much, I realized it's harvest time. And I think one of the dislocations of this whole lockdown is that we're a bit less tuned to things, because the events that normally mark the seasons of the year aren't happening as much, or are happening online. So I thought I'd share a little story tonight in honor of harvest time, which of course Samhain marks the end of harvest time as well. And this is a story from the Native American tradition, and it goes like this. Long, long ago, when the earth was much younger than it is now, there were no farmers. The people hunted animals and they foraged for wild berries and fruits, but they were often hungry. But at that time, there was an old, old woman who understood many things. And for weeks, she had been going down to the riverbank and hearing a voice sing out from the river. And the voice sang like this: "Fair and fine, fine and fair are the fields where I grow and ripen." And she did not know what this meant, but she went back day after day and she began to sing this back to the singer in the river. Until finally she went to her whole village and she said to the people, "Something wonderful is coming, something that will change us. And I want us all to go to the riverbank and listen together and find out what it is." And so that evening, all the villagers, the men, the women and children, they all went to the riverbank. And together they heard this voice coming out of the river. "Fine and fair, fair and fine are the fields where I grow and ripen." And the villagers began to sing this back, and the singing swelled into the sky until darkness fell. And when darkness fell, some of the little children grew afraid and they began to cry. And the old grandmother, she said, "You go home. Take your mothers and fathers with you, for I am not afraid. I will stay here and find out what we must do." And so the villagers went home, and this old woman, bent and alone, stayed by the riverbank. And many moments of stillness passed until a voice called out, "Grandmother, bring me ashore." And the grandmother, she got into a kayak, she paddled it out to the middle of the river. And there, by the light of the moon, she saw the back of a beaver arched in the water. And on the beaver's back, there sat a graceful young girl. The young girl jumped off the beaver's back into the kayak, and the grandmother rowed her back to the other side of the riverbank, and she stepped ashore. "Go home now," she said. "Go home, but come back at first light." And so the grandmother, she went back, but at first light she was there, and there, where the young girl had stepped onto the riverbank, there was a golden stalk of corn. And the old woman, she plucked the stalk of corn and she took it home and she hung it up over her fireplace on a pole. And that night she had a dream. And in that dream, the stalk of corn was again the graceful girl. And she spoke. "It is too hot for me by the fire. Take me outside, shake out my seeds into the ground, sprinkle them over with soil and wait." Well, the old woman, she took it down, she went out, she did as she had been told, and she waited. Many weeks passed, and then some green shoots began coming up through the earth. And again, the old grandmother had a dream in which the girl appeared to her again and said this. "Know this," she said, "I have come to feed you. When the time of leaf fall comes, harvest me. Shake me out and grind me with a stone into corn, and with the grain add water, make a dough and make bread, and I will feed your village and make you all strong." Well, the old grandmother, she waited, and many moons waxed and waned until it was the time of leaf fall, and the corn had grown tall and strong. And she harvested it, and she made it into grain, and she baked bread with it. And when the bread was ready, she invited the whole village to come and share the feast. But she had kept some of the seeds for every house in the village. And she shared the bread, and she gave every villager a little bowl of seeds. And she spoke to her people. "This is a gift," she said, "from the corn maiden. Know that it is sacred. Know that all things that grow are sacred. And if we remember this, all will be well. If we do not, there will come a time of great hunger and sorrow." And for many, many generations, the people remembered. But then it began to be forgotten. And so now, especially in these times, we need to remember again that everything that grows to feed us on this earth is sacred. Thank you.